So this is your Bay Area treasure speaking. And so this business of interpreting California for people, I come from Boston. And sometimes there's a wonderful statement that sometimes a virgin is not the best person to describe virginity. I think that maybe a Californian is not the best person to describe California. I came at it with a freshness, I came at it with a sense of wonderment, and it's been a tremendous vacation from my upbringing. So about 45 years ago, I fell into this rabbit hole, and I got into this world of California Indians. I didn't know what I was getting into, but it's been the most amazing adventure. And after 45 years, I'm going to sum it up in 15 minutes. But I'm actually going to have a conference in Berkeley. I'm getting together other non-Indians who have been into the Indian world to discuss what we've learned, what constraints we work under, how it's changed us, how it's changed our attitudes, how it's changed our beliefs, how it's changed the way we conduct our life. And if you want to leave me a name, I'd love to tell you about this conference. So, in terms of so about 35 years ago, I put together this anthology of California Indian writings and oral histories. I had done the Ohlone way, which I had done in my voice, and I figured this was not quite right. It needed Indian voice. So I collected from various archives and then from various friends reminiscences about Indian life in this Bay Area, in California. The fact is that there's stuff in here that is marvelously accessible. And some of it is stuff that we would recognize as poetry, something we would recognize as song. So among the stuff that I collected were love songs from the Wintu. The Wintu lived up near Mount Shasta in the upper part of the Sacramento Valley. And the kind of love song is, the sleeping place which you and I hollowed out will remain always, will remain always, will remain always, will remain always. Then there's another song that was another love song. And it refers to the deer decoy mask. When a person went out to hunt deer, they put on a deer head with antlers. They paint themselves up like deer, and they go to join the herd. And hunting was more like, hunting in our culture is aggressive. In Indian world, it was more like wooing. The deer would have to come to you. And this love song is, when he walks about, pushing the deer decoy back away from his face, right there in front of him, may it come gliding down and fall. The woman wants to come like the deer to the hunter. And there's stuff like that I think we understand, and it's wonderful. Dorothea Lange, who lived in Berkeley, the photographer, when she was teaching photography, she said, she instructed her students, when you go out, do not photograph what you know, do not photograph to confirm what you know, photograph to learn new things and to expand yourself. I think the stuff that has intrigued me over the years has been the stuff that I don't quite understand. And the stuff that doesn't fit into our world vision, the stuff that is new, the stuff that's surprising. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's surprising because this is a generalization, but Indians tend to use language differently from us. We use language to conquer the world, to define things. We learn to fix things. We use language as a way of advancing ourselves in the world. For the Indians, the world was much bigger than our capacity to understand it. There was a sense of mystery to it. So they used language to express wonderment. And a whole lot of these myths that they have, these myths that strike us as so crazy about how hummingbird married grizzly bear and gave birth to eagle and stuff like that. These are not things that explain anything. They're things that embrace the world with wonderment and teach us relationships and teach us to respect the mysteries of the world. I think that what I would love to do is get into some of the stuff that I've learned, and I'll read a few passages. This is from a Pomo guy, and the Pomo lived up around Sonoma, and he was a man from Clear Lake, and he's defining what a person is. We have this sense of we have a cult of individualism. We believe in people. With them, there was no individualism. He says, "What is man? A man is nothing. Without family, he is of less importance than that bug crossing the trail, of less importance than spit or dung. At least they can be used to poison a man. A man must be with his family to amount to anything with us. If he had nobody to help him, the first trouble he got into, he'd be killed by his enemies because there would be no relatives to help him fight the poison of the other group. No woman would marry him because her family would not let her marry a man with no family. He would be poorer than a newborn child. He would be poorer than a worm, and the family would not consider him worth anything." And then it goes on to talk about how the family was everything. No man ever forgot that. Each person was nothing, but as a group joined by blood, the individual knew that he could get the support of all his relatives if anything happened. He also knew that if he was a bad person, the headman of his family would pay another person, another tribe, to kill him, so there would be no trouble afterwards, that he would not get into the family into trouble all the time. That is why we were good people. This sense of family. Individuals did not own things. Families owned things. Individuals did not have rights. Families had rights. They lived in a community of people, and they were bound to that community. And you were taken care of by your community. This I got from a woman named Lucy Smith. Her daughter Kathleen is a good friend. Kathleen lives in Walnut Creek, and Lucy Smith was a Pomo. She died about 20 years ago, and she was a touch of that old world. When I first got into this Indian stuff, there were people around who were born in the 1890s and the 1900s, and they had been raised by grandparents and great-grandparents that remembered California before the coming of Europeans, before the gold rush. And there were people that had that direct transmission, and there were people that the world will never see again. There was a nobility to them, there was a kindness, there was a humor, there was a sense of place, there was a knowledge, there was also a violence, and I don't know how that violence exists with that great gentleness, but it was there. And it was a world of poisoners. It was a world of spirits, of places where you couldn't go, of evil. The world was alive. It was tremendously alive. Everything was alive in that world. So Lucy Smith said, "We had many relatives, and we all had to get together, so we better learn how to get along with each other." My mother said it wasn't hard to do. It was just like taking care of your younger brother or sister. You got to know them, find out what they were like, what made them cry, so you'd know what to do. If you took good care of them, you wouldn't have to work as hard. Sounds like it's not true, but it is. When that baby gets to be a man or a woman, they're going to help you out. You know, I thought she was talking about us Indians and how we were supposed to get along. I found out later by my older sister that our mother wasn't just talking about Indians, but the plants, animals, birds, everything on this earth. They are relatives, and we better learn how to act around them or they'll get after us. That sense of family extended not just to people, but to the world around you. There's a tribe in the Sacramento Valley called the Maidu Indians. In 1870, there was a guy named Powers who came from the American Bureau of Ethnography to learn about Indians. And he was one of the first people to sort out these hundreds of languages, these hundreds of tribes, this chaos of people. And so he came to the Maidu territory and says, "What's your name? What do you call yourself?" And they said, "We're Maidu." So he listed this as the Maidu tribe. In 1902, a linguist from Harvard named Dixon came. He discovered that Maidu meant people. So what they were saying was, we're people. In the 1950s, my wonderful friend Bill Shipley, who taught at UC Santa Cruz, came as a linguist. He found out that Maidu didn't just mean people, it meant animals, plants. What they were saying was, we're beings. We're beings in this great world of beings. There's something in that broad definition that's so marvelous. And to live in that world, it was so extraordinary. And to live in a world in which everything was alive. One of my favorite things is to head out with Indians and look at their land. And look at the rocks that were once people, the trees that were once people. Songs were alive. everything was alive, and it had life and integrity. It had life outside of people. Stories had an existence outside of people, and there was a sense that you called the story to you. Part of Indian pedagogy was you didn't just aggressively go after knowledge. You put yourself out in the world, and the world would give you gifts of knowledge. And there's a whole different way of acting like that. So I'm going to read one last thing. And this is what it means to be alive in that kind of world in which you see everything as a relative. It's a grandfather's prayer. It was a Wintu woman, and she talked about how when she was young, her grandfather used to say this prayer. Olelbus looked down on me. Olelbus was the world maker. Olelbus looked down on me. I wash my face in water for you. Seeking to remain in health. I am advancing in old age. I am not capable of anything anymore. You whose nature it is to be eaten. You dwell high in the west on the mountains, high in the east, high in the north, high in the south. You salmon, you go about in the water, yet I cannot kill you and bring you home. Neither can I go east down the slope to fetch you, salmon. When a man is so advanced in age, he is not in full vigor. If you are rock, look at me, I am advancing in old age. If you are tree, look at me, I am advancing in old age. If you are water, look at me, I am advancing in old age. Acorns, I can never climb up to you again. You, water, I can never dip you up and fetch you home again. My legs are advancing in weakness. Sugar pine, you sit there, I can never climb you. In my northward arm, in my southward arm, I am advancing in weakness. You who are wood, you wood, I cannot carry you home on my shoulder, for I'm falling back into my cradle. This is what my ancestors told me yesterday. They have gone long ago. May my children fare likewise. There's a couple of things I want to talk about in this. One of them is that line, it's this man at the end of his life addressing the things around him as friends. There's the trees, there's the salmon, there's you whose nature it is to be eaten, which were the deer. And you couldn't address them as deer. It had to be a circumlocution, because it was impolite to address them by their name. So you address them as you whose nature it is to be eaten. There's that business of the northward arm and the southward arm. So this is my right hand, and I can say something like, Albany Hill is to my right. In winter, you can't say that. You do not stand in the center of the world and give direction. This is my northward arm. If I were to turn around, this would be my southward arm. You do not give, the individual does not give direction to the world. It takes direction from the world around them. And I think it's a marvelous thing to come in contact with. It's the tip of the iceberg. There's a way of seeing things in there that's so marvelous. The Yurok have 23 different ways of counting, depending on what's being counted. And it's clear that 3 people are not the same as 3 trees, are not the same as 3 myths, are not the same as 3 ideas. They're all different. And everything is given its individuality. Everything is given its life. We end up having a system of numbers which allowed us to build computers, it allowed us to build systems, but we tend to lose that sense of the uniqueness and individuality of everything. So listen. Hey, let me know if you want to hear more. And I'm going to have a conference in which I'm going to get together some people that have hung around Indians for years. I'll get some Indians to talk about Indian pedagogy, how people teach. But, hey, thanks so much.